Instagram. So we've seen so many changes on Instagram over the last few years that honestly, it's kind of hard to keep up. And sure, a lot of changes does mean that they're constantly working at the app and constantly adapting and changing. And change most of the time is good, except when it isn't. And the latest change was announced last week on May the 4th by Adam Mosseri, head of Instagram. He took to Twitter to post a video detailing all of the changes that would be happening to the feed, specifically, well, most notably around imagery and what would happen to images in Instagram.
At the beginning of the year, I talked about how important video and messaging was to the future of Instagram. We're moving Instagram to a place where video is a bigger part of the home experience, where the content is more immersive, it takes up more of the screen, where a larger part of feed are recommendations, things we think you might love but you might not have heard of yet, and where you have more control over the experience. One step on that path we're starting to experiment with this week, which is a test where both photos and videos take up more of your screen. We know the future of video and the future of photos are mobile first. They are 9:16, they are immersive. And so what you'll see is us testing out taller photos and taller videos in your feed. So we're gonna try and learn as much as we can over these next few weeks. If you see it, that's what you're seeing, that's why. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you love it, great. If you hate it, great. Just let me know. We're trying to figure out how to advance Instagram forward in a world where more and more people are gonna be mobile first. Hopefully you like it. See you next week. Peace.
Now, keep in mind that although he phrases these changes as experimental tests, historically speaking, when these tests have been so publicized, so publicly announced, most of the time, historically speaking, they actually do make their way into the app and become a fully fledged feature that is usually a pretty long-standing one. So, 16:9 images, mobile first, and honestly, I am in two minds about it. On one side, as a former product designer, it makes perfect sense because most people, the people who don't own cameras and don't spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on gear and take photos with their phones instead, they both take and consume images on Instagram in a vertical or a portrait orientation. And having images in a 16:9 orientation means that the image will actually take up more vertical real estate on the phone. It'll take up hopefully the entire height of the phone, which it increases immersion when viewing individual images. And this increase in immersion is great because that leads to a better viewing experience. It leads to better user satisfaction, leading to potentially, longer daily active use and a whole host of other really positive forward-moving metrics from a product design and a product management perspective. However, for photographers, right. Sure, it takes up more real estate on the screen, and that's great, but, let's be real for a second. For the people who actually care about their images, for the people who aspire to be photographers or have the confidence to call themselves photographers, for the people who take more than just snapshots, the people who actually care about their images. Now, we don't see things in 16:9 portrait orientation. And we've been kind of straddling this line for ever since the app has been created. When Instagram was first released, it was originally a 1:1 square photo sharing app. And so for our landscapes, our wide, gorgeous and open vistas, we would have to have, a white bar at the top and a white bar at the bottom in order to show the width of an image. And even today, with the current 4:5 ratio, we still do this, except now we even do like swipes over an 8:5 crop ratio over two images, where you swipe between the two images to get the entire full vista. And with 16:9, this is going to get even more difficult. Your images will be even more squished, even more narrow. In the first few years of my photography, I unconsciously trained myself to shoot in pretty much portrait orientation only because I knew that I was going to be posting to Instagram. And, I'd look back on all of my work and review all of my images in Lightroom, right? And I'd find that because everything was shot in portrait and everything, actual portraits, obviously, but landscapes as well, architecture, street photography, all done in portrait orientation, right? I found that meant that I didn't have any other images to post on any other platform. I couldn't use my images for my website, right? I couldn't sell them as stock, or I couldn't upload them to other platforms where landscapes actually do look good. Hell, I couldn't even print some of them because the crop sizes just looked kind of strange, right? This was really, really bad. And it's only in the last like 3 or 4 years that I've completely retrained myself to take both landscape and portrait variations of every single image that I take or that's worth taking. And sure, it's laborious, but for me, I would much rather have both variations, or at the very least, have a landscape version and then crop in, rather than take a portrait version and then regret not having the landscape version later on. And due to this switch, I find that my own photography has become immensely more versatile across many, many different platforms now. But still, even though I have portrait versions of almost every image that I take now, there are some images and some image categories that don't really lend themselves to be shown in a very narrow 16:9 portrait orientation. And I feel that this change on Instagram will again change the way how a lot of photographers shoot. Instagram keeps moving and iterating, and I think that's great. And I think that moving to a mobile first approach is the right move, and it's a really good move for the future of the app. But that also means that the original core audience that Instagram first started with, photographers like you and me, has, in my opinion, been abandoned. And I would love to know your thoughts and perspectives on that, so leave me a comment in the comment section below. For me, I think I am finally going to give in, whether that's fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, right? If you're not running Instagram as a business, or you don't really care about growth, then you can use the app in whatever way you want to and however you want to, right? More power to you, and I am extremely envious of you. However, for me, my main account is one of the many main channels of my business. And as such, I need to adapt. And I've historically been, for this issue anyway, quite slow to adapt to the app's changes. And if I don't change now, I'll get left behind. That's just the way it is, even if it means that I have to present my work in a way that isn't ideal for me. I need to adapt. And so what you'll see from me in the near future are reels, probably just simple ones, and 16:9 images when they eventually roll out to everyone. I'll keep trying to do so whilst keeping my artistic integrity intact, of course, but it's time to adapt. And I think it's a really great time for me to reiterate what I mentioned in my previous video about the Instagram changes for photographers, in which I had 2 really big key takeaways at the end, which are still true even almost a year after I originally posted that video. And the first one is to diversify. I think as a photographer, sure, you take and you share photos, and that's great, but that also doesn't stop you from sharing your opinion or your thoughts in text form via Twitter, for example, or engaging in another creative art and posting that on a platform like, say, TikTok, for example, or sitting in front of the camera and doing a video on a video platform like YouTube. Not being at the mercy of any single one platform gives you the space to be agile at all of the platforms. And I think that's really important nowadays, especially as the idea of what a successful photographer is has greatly expanded in both size and scale, right? I think nowadays the most successful photographers are, sure, they're fantastic at taking photos, but they're also skilled at sharing their ideas both in video form or in written form, wherever the platforms take them. There are also people who engage in their communities, or they're people who build safe spaces for like-minded individuals, right? The skill of the craft of photography alone in a business context is no longer enough. The bar has been raised, and I think if you're interested in that path, then you'll have to follow. And the second big takeaway is to have something that alleviates the pressure from having to engage in the social media hamster wheel, because as creatives, I think that's really, really important. Sure, we still need to share our primary work, right? And make a name for ourselves, but we also need to create just to have fun, right? We need to enjoy the process and love the craft, right? We need an avenue for release, and we need to explore, because that's what's required for good creativity. Play. Anyway, here we are at the trailhead of yet another Instagram change that will surely have rippling effects across our photography industry. And whether you see it as an opportunity to push back or you see it as an opportunity to go along with the change, that's completely up to you. There is no right or wrong answer, but I would love to know your perspectives and your thoughts on that in the comments below. And speaking of, diversity, I think I'm going to start posting to Twitter a little bit more often now. I was kind of waiting for the whole NFT circle jerk thing to die down a little bit. And now that it has, I promise that there's not going to be any NFT or cryptocurrency talk, but, there will be shit talking about my life and Japan and photography in general. And if you're interested in that, then, come follow me over at Twitter at HeyApatK. Of course, my Discord is also free to join as well. So if you want to go and chat to 1,000+ different like-minded individuals, creatives, and photographers, then I'll leave a link to my server in the description box below. As for this video, that's it. I'll see you in the next one. But until then, get out there and make something that matters and share it on a platform that matters to you. All right. Peace.